Hello, Michigan. I'm Malachi Barrett. I'm a reporter here for MLive, who's been covering the presidential campaign over the last year, although it's felt more like a decade.
Hi, and I'm Emily Lawler. I'm a reporter with MLive as well. I cover politics, and I'm looking forward to a rockin' election, which Malachi has been doing a ton of work on.
Well, we're finally almost, I guess, at the end. I don't want to say we're at the end yet because polls have not closed, but we want to have a little chat with everyone about what to expect today, what election day in Michigan is looking like, some important things that voters need to know as you go out to the polls today. Hopefully you've already voted, but there's still obviously a lot of time left to do that if you haven't yet. And we really want to hear from you as well. So if you are willing to tell us a little bit about what your experience has been like today, we'd like to know, if you voted already, what things kind of have looked like at the polls, any long lines or things like that. Maybe if you voted, weeks ago. We've been able to vote here in Michigan since the end of September. Why you decided to make that decision. We'd like to hear a little bit more from you guys as well.
Yeah. So I think one of the first things that we wanted to talk about for people still voting, and I'm sure there will be a little bit of a rush to do that, especially once traditional working hours end. The polls are open until 8 p.m., obviously, and a little bit later in the two counties in a different time zone in the Upper Peninsula. But I think one thing that's different this year is this is our first presidential election that you can do same-day registration on. So if you're sitting at home thinking, I never got around to registering, or I just moved, no big deal. You can go to the polls and register and vote at the same time.
And you should go to your local clerk's office to do that. And that is the great thing, is that you don't have to make a separate trip to whatever precinct or polling place. You can get it all done in one trip. So you still have the opportunity to do that all the way up until 8 p.m. when polls close today. Just some other important things to note. If you do encounter some late lines, if you're in line, stay in line after 8 p.m. You're still allowed to vote. Everyone in that line, their vote will still be counted. You have an opportunity to do that. So, don't feel discouraged if it's, 8:15 and there's still a little bit of ways to go. You can still have your voice heard. If you already have submitted an absentee ballot, you can go on the Secretary of State's website and check the status of that. If you, put it in a Dropbox a while ago or put it in the mail and haven't checked back in, feel a little anxious about things, you can go back in there, and the Secretary of State has been tracking all of that information. So you can just search your own name and find out what the status of that is.
So you mentioned lines, and earlier today we had a little poll where we were asking people, but I would love to know how long you guys stood in line. I'm seeing there's kind of like two kinds of long lines. One is that it looks physically long, but doesn't actually take that long because people are spaced 6 feet apart. So if you see a line out the door and you think, oh shoot, I've never voted in an election where a line's been out the door, that may be a little bit of a false perception, and it may move a little bit quicker than you think.
Now, Emily and I, we both live in Lansing. So I actually turned in my absentee ballot yesterday on Monday because I was covering the president's final rally in Grand Rapids last night. And, today's busy for reporters. So I figured I would just get that out of the way. And there was actually a bit of a line at the Lansing clerk's office for folks that wanted to come in and do that early. So I just kind of slid mine into the Dropbox. But Emily, what was your kind of voting experience like this year?
Yeah, I put mine in, the city of Lansing established sort of these regional drop boxes. So there's one in my neighborhood. It's right outside the community center that I would vote at if I went to the polls on election day. So I dropped it off in the Dropbox there and had a nice little walk. But that was yesterday, 2 days ago, I think Sunday. So I turned it in. However, I'm not really expecting, I'm not certain that the online system would really have the time to register and kick around since I turned it in so recently.
So folks probably remember back in 2018, the reason absentee voting was expanded is because the majority of Michigan voters adopted a change to the state constitution that has allowed anyone to do that for any reason. But we've seen a real push for absentee voting that we may not have seen otherwise, I think, because of the coronavirus pandemic and the concerns about, being close to people, long lines, all of that kind of health concern. So there's been a real push over the last couple of months to get more activity, more participation, I guess I should say, in absentee voting. And we've been kind of wondering if the coronavirus surge that we've been seeing here in Michigan and really across the whole country is going to make any impact on turnout on the day. And we've been finding that it's really kind of a partisan issue, I guess, as everything seems to be these days. But a lot of voters that I talked with who were supporters of the president said, this isn't going to deter them. They want to go cast their vote in person to make sure that that's counted. Even if folks don't necessarily have concerns about the electoral process, there seems to be a little bit more, feeling of safety and actually physically handing that ballot over to folks. Emily, have you encountered, I know you were able to talk with some voters at some events recently. Did that come up when you were talking with people?
Yeah, I actually talked with people from both parties who had already voted absentee, particularly some Republican voters at some Trump events that had already voted absentee and typically voted absentee. But our colleagues, Scott and Julie, came up with this map recently. And this is basically ballots returned as of Monday compared to the 2016 turnout. So you can see that in a lot of areas of the state here, particularly concentrated in our urban areas, some of these blue dots you're seeing are Detroit, Ann Arbor, Lansing, Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids. That there's a lot of people who have turned in absentee ballots, and in some cases that absentee turnout is already meaning that it's going to be a bigger turnout than there was in 2016.
So as of Monday, this number has grown a little bit, but as of Monday, there were 2.9 million voters who had submitted an absentee ballot. And the Secretary of State expected that would be 60%-ish of the overall turnout. And her expectation is that we're going to set a turnout record, surpassing the 5.08, I believe, million voters that cast a ballot in 2008. We're that's a lot of numbers, I guess I'm throwing at you guys. But the point is we've seen the really high return rate on these ballots. I think it's around 85% as of yesterday, with a lot more coming in, over the last day. I think the total number as of today is 3.1 million absentee ballots that have been turned in. But I bring up that 85% number to show that, of the folks that had asked for one, a vast majority have already turned them in or, are in the process of doing that today. And as Emily noted, I mean, it's all across the state. It's not just in, your Republican areas or your Democratic areas. We're seeing a really big increase in participation statewide, all up along the West Michigan coastline. A lot of those communities, your kind of Ottawa counties, your Southwest Michigan, all the way up to Ludington, all the way up north, the Traverse City, Leelanau Peninsula, throughout the UP and Marquette. And then obviously that huge splash down in the southeast corner of the state, that big concentration of purple, that's all Metro Detroit. That's your Macomb, Oakland County, city of Detroit. North of that is Flint. And then even kind of northwest from there, your Ann Arbor and Lansing area, you're seeing really high percent of ballots returned absentee this time compared to 2016.
In our preliminary chat here, I was describing that bit of purple along the western Lake Michigan frontage as the west coast of Michigan, which isn't right? I'm from here.
We could adopt that. I kind of like that.
Yeah, a little East Coast, West Coast vibe. They're only 300 miles apart. I love it.
Yeah, maybe drop in the comments if you're a West Coast or East Coast aficionado. I find the West Coast a little bit sandier. The beaches are a little bit nicer than kind of the Lake Huron side. But that's just me.
But yeah, and we actually have a map too of how the election turned out in 2016. And one thing you'll notice is that there's that one blue county in the Upper Peninsula. That's I believe Marquette County, where the city of Marquette, and so I'm second guessing my county name there. I'm sorry. Is that Marquette or Delta County? I forget.
No, that would be Marquette.
Marquette County. Okay. But that's where the university is. That's where the city of Marquette is. And you saw on the other map that it had that purple there too. So I do think, as you said, Malachi, that there is a little bit of a pattern where there's definitely more absentees being mailed in the more liberal areas, which is going to lead to sort of an interesting election results night for us. What are you expecting? What are you kind of expecting to learn first, and what are you expecting to learn last?
Well, turnout. We're going to get a good picture of that before we actually get results in. I think it might, bleed into the night where we're actually kind of deciding or learning how the elections were decided today. But I think the most interesting thing for me is, what does turnout look like compared to 2016? Donald Trump won the state by only just under 11,000 votes. It was the tightest margin of any state in the entire country in 2016, and was also the narrowest result in Michigan's history. So, 10,000 votes sounds like it's a lot. It was very close. And part of that reason, the president increased Republican votes across the state, but Democrats also saw a pretty steep drop off in votes. And there was, a lot of people that went third party as well. So there's, hypothetically a lot of voters who's, if they decide to vote this time, they're kind of up for grabs. There were 295,000 fewer Democratic votes in 2016 compared to 2012 when Barack Obama won the state with Joe Biden. Does Joe Biden on the ticket encourage more of those folks to come out? Particularly in the Detroit area where they spent so much time. Biden and Obama were there again on Saturday, making their kind of final case to voters. And Kamala Harris is, I think she's in Southfield right now looking at the clock, but she was in Detroit earlier today and is making one last push in that part of the state again. But, the Republicans, Donald Trump, he's been all over the state. He's sent surrogates across West Michigan, Central Michigan, into the kind of suburban communities around Oakland and Macomb County. And they're expecting this kind of silent majority of folks who are maybe not showing up in the polls, not vocal, when reporters like us are going to talk with folks and get a sense for how things are going, but they expect those people to come out and vote. And, the rallies he's been holding in Michigan have been really well attended, tens of thousands of people, or I should say a little over, 10,000 people. We didn't get a great count of the folks last night in Grand Rapids, but, there was a sea of people, I guess, if I could describe it that way, that were out there. So what does turnout look like? Both sides have been really pumping up turnout, or, pumping up their voters, trying to get people not just, in the base, but first-time voters, younger voters. And since it's easier to vote now, what's that going to look like? I think that's the most interesting thing for us who are going to be watching the election tonight.
So Malachi, as somebody who's been Zooming all around the state, you have very kindly and very professionally covered all of these events. I appreciate it. Thank you.
My car doesn't necessarily.
Yes, I can imagine. It's probably screaming for an oil change.
Yeah.
But, you've been at Joe Biden events, you've been at Trump events just in the last couple days. What was sort of their closing message to voters in Michigan as they made those final appearances in the state of Michigan?
I think it all comes down to coronavirus and the economy, which might be an obvious thing for anyone living in this year and this, crazy time that we've been through over the last 7 months or so. To start on the president's side, he's arguing that he alone can restore the economy after we've suffered a recession over the last couple of months. You've seen a bounce back in terms of jobs, but there's still a lot of people out of work. Michigan, I believe we're at like 8.6% unemployment still. But he's arguing with a second term, he can bring those jobs back. He can boost manufacturing in Michigan. He can, bring back auto manufacturers, auto plants to the state. And this virus will be, tamed and put under control with the development of a virus, which he's been promising could come, within a matter of weeks, months. It's not really clear if that's possible, but, by his second term, I think it's been agreed upon by, health officials that that's realistic. And then on the other side, Biden is arguing that we're kind of in this situation because of the president. He and Obama made a very clear case in their stops in Flint and Detroit on Saturday that Trump has kind of mishandled this and spoiled what they had given him in terms of a growing economy. It was the longest period of economic growth that we had experienced until that COVID pandemic struck. And, they are basically arguing that they came to Michigan in 2009, saved the auto industry. They'll do it again. They've already kind of managed the country through a recession. Joe Biden, as the vice president, has helped weather the Great Recession. He can do that again. And, Biden is taking a tougher stance when it comes to things like mask wearing, social distancing requirements. He's said that he would support business closures if that was necessary. And that's been kind of the biggest distinction between the two. Last night in Grand Rapids said that, with Biden, you're going to get lockdowns and it's going to hurt the economy. Biden says with Trump, you're going to get a guy who's been ignoring the virus, and that's going to hurt the economy and, the health and safety of the people. So, it all depends on who you trust to weather those two crises that we're facing right now.
Yeah, and it's funny because it strikes me as you're talking about these that, Donald Trump has put such a big emphasis on the economy as, I guess, his winning issue. Joe Biden has put such a big emphasis on properly handling the coronavirus as his biggest issue. But really, those are the two seeds for either campaign. President Trump's message isn't, who cares about coronavirus? Here, let's care about the economy. It's that he has a lot of economic goals, and then also he's standing by his handling of the coronavirus. And Joe Biden's message is, we really need to get the coronavirus under control. He would handle it differently, but also he has all these economic concerns as well. So I really do think those are dominating the discussion, no matter which side of the aisle you're on.
In addition to seeing the two big men themselves, we've also seen their second in commands come to Michigan a lot. Vice President Pence has visited, if not the same number of times that the president did, or probably more, I think, over the last couple of months. And Kamala Harris has been here a few times. Obviously, she's here today, too. Emily, what have you seen from Democratic voters about, reacting to that choice that Joe Biden made in picking, the first woman of color to secure a major party's nomination for vice president? How has that energized, younger people of color in the party that you've interacted with?
Yeah, and I see we have this question from Patrick as well that dovetails right into that. How much do you think that a woman VP on the ticket and a minority have to do with turnout, especially among young voters? We have seen an uptick in young voter interest this election. So we do know that there's a little bit of that going on, which is sort of amazing when you think about major universities like Michigan State, for instance, right down the road for us, that aren't having in-person classes. That's 40,000-ish students who would normally be concentrated right here who either aren't or are living off campus. And then, I think that we both talked to some people right after the selection of Kamala Harris who were really enthusiastic. I think that sort of invigorated the ticket at a time when it needed some invigoration. I think that a lot of people were sort of wondering who he'd pick in that second slot and hoping that it would frankly be someone a little bit more representative of what the United States is starting, the demographics of the United States. I mean, frankly, we had two of our oldest candidates to date competing for this position, which actually I think I remember saying in 16 as well. So if you want to call me on that, they keep getting older. I don't know.
Biden's 77, Trump's 73, would be 74. So either of them, if elected, would be the oldest president to ever serve. So
yeah, I really do remember a similar statistic last cycle. So.
Yeah, I think Trump was the oldest in his first term as well. Yeah.
So I do think that she really invigorated the party. And I think that a lot of people, who are tried and true Democratic voters are sort of looking at her as the heir apparent. I'm not sure if they think that Biden's going to go for 2 terms or not, but it does seem like, with this pick, he was telecasting not only the direction he wants his administration to go in, but sort of the future of the party. And I think people picked up on that. And I do think that's driving a lot of enthusiasm. But what's your read on that?
Yeah, no, I think you hit it on the head. I mean, for as dynamic and diverse as the primary ticket was, we heard Democrats, especially in the younger generation, who had, pinned a lot of hopes on maybe seeing the face of the party change after, not being happy with kind of the establishment pick in 2016, that Biden had got it. And I think that, as you note, I mean, bringing in a younger person of color reflects a lot of the changing dynamics of this country. And I think it, maybe gives people a feeling that those, there will be a seat at the table in that administration. And, we certainly heard just so much excitement from people of color. Brenda Lawrence, I remember talking to a congresswoman who represents Detroit. She was the first, I think, person to throw her weight behind a candidate in the primary of our kind of Michigan political folks. Way early in the primary, she backed Kamala Harris and was disappointed that she ultimately dropped out before Michigan was able to vote in the primary, and was just so excited that Joe Biden had reached out and brought her in. And, he had kind of pledged to make his vice presidential pick a woman. I think a lot of people wanted to hold him to that, felt that was important to engage some important voters. And I don't know, we'll see if it pays off. But, I think symbolically it was pretty important for him to do that.
One thing that strikes me, and feel free to disagree, but in the 2016 election, there was a really big enthusiasm gap between how excited Democrats were to vote for Hillary Clinton, which was not very, and how excited Republicans were to vote for Donald Trump, which was in some cases tens of thousands of people at rallies. I think that was palpable on the ground here in Michigan. For example, I remember going to when Barack Obama came on election eve, I believe in 2016, for Clinton. I remember going to that event and interviewing people in line. And I was looking for Clinton supporters for other stories I was working on and also to encapsulate the day. And I remember people saying to me, like, multiple people were there to see Barack Obama and really didn't care about Hillary Clinton. And I thought, at the time, I kind of thought, well, that's an interesting dynamic. Like, he is here for her campaign. But I don't really see that this time around. I think that there's a lot more enthusiasm on the Democratic side of the ticket than there was in 2016, certainly. And I think it's sort of paralleling the enthusiasm from people who supported the president in 2016 and plan to support him again this cycle. But that said, you've been on the ground at far more events than I have. What have you seen in terms of how excited people are? And of course, when I talk about enthusiasm, the reason I'm talking about it is because I want to know that if it rains on election day, people are still going to go to the polls, right? I think that why it matters is that sometimes if enthusiasm isn't there, then people don't turn out. And that's a little bit of, I think, what we saw in 2016.
Yeah, I think, to your point, there was a lot of disillusionment with the choices that people had, too. I think that's why we saw such a third-party vote increase in Michigan. But, even going back to the primary, we're at these Bernie Sanders rallies. We're at, rallies for some of the other kind of leading candidates who came to Michigan. And we were asking folks this question, way back then, whoever the Democratic nominee is, do you see yourself voting for them? Do you see that? It's, at that point we had thought, it could probably be Biden. What do you kind of make of that choice? And, I don't think there was one person that I spoke to that said that they would sit out if Biden got the nomination. And that's not to say that, Biden is such an inspirational candidate. And he certainly, is inspiring people more, I think, than Hillary did. He's a lot more popular. He doesn't have some of these same issues that have kind of dogged her throughout her career. He's not up against some of the sexism that she faced, frankly, from voters. But, people are really motivated to vote against Trump as well. And I think it's hard to talk about, this enthusiasm for Biden without including that in there. People who were maybe willing to give a Trump administration the benefit of the doubt, a lot of them could be now looking at things like, well, it didn't really work out as well as I had probably hoped. And so, I didn't necessarily, swallow my pride and vote for Clinton last time, but I'm going to make sure that I show up this time. And, we're running into a lot of folks. And again, that's not to say that I'm not encountering enthusiasm for Joe Biden himself as a candidate. I think people are really excited by the promises that he's made for Michigan in particular. Bringing all these new green energy jobs to the manufacturing center, center of our state, which would be Southeast Michigan. Taxing businesses that move jobs overseas. These are some policies that have, working folks, union people really excited. And, he has adopted some of the more progressive policies that some of his contemporaries in the primary had been pushing. He's worked with Bernie Sanders on some issues. Kamala Harris, it was one of the more progressive people running in that race as well. And so, there's, for folks that maybe were seeking someone more inspirational, there's things to like about Joe as well. But, overwhelmingly what I'm running into is people saying, we can't do 4 more years of this president. And, especially, in these Democratic strongholds, these urban centers that have been hit really hard by the virus, they have a lot of tangible reasons to get out there and vote.
Yeah. Well, Donald Trump, meanwhile, is sort of pinning hopes on the silent majority of Trump voters. And I've heard this from a number of Trump supporters who tell me that they know people who do support Trump, do vote for Trump, but are not going to put those yard signs out or necessarily, go about saying that to their friends and neighbors. So I do think that that's a little bit of a narrative, and it shows up not only in sort of the cultural attitudes as far as, displaying a sign or canvassing or volunteering, but also in polling. So there's some thought that Trump voters are less likely to answer polls, which I should say that some pollsters I've talked to recently don't give a lot of credence to. But there is some thought that that's part of why the polls were so wrong in 2016, and that we could be seeing that phenomenon happening over again in 2020. Have you seen any shy Trump voters? How much do you think that that's a factor here?
It's an interesting idea because the Trump voters that make themselves known are certainly anything but shy, right? I mean, you've got people with the flags, and the boisterous Trump supporters are definitely boisterous.
And he is winning the sign war, for what it's worth. If the old axiom in politics is signs don't vote, but I have seen more Trump signs than anything else across the state this year.
He's definitely winning the flags off the back of trucks, like driving on the highway thing too. I've just seen that, driving in different parts of the state, not even for work. But there are people that I've run into that are kind of, in the corner at these events, and I go up and chat with them a little bit, and they're not, wearing the red hat or anything, but they're talking about how in their communities, they're seeing more support, they're seeing more signs, but there are people that are kind of hesitant to put that sign out there as well. There have been some signs taken down and things like that, and people kind of worry about affiliating themselves that way. The silent majority, though, as an idea, could very well be sound considering what happened in 2016. I mean, the president, he earned more votes than Mitt Romney did in this state in 2012. He increased turnout, and he really beefed up turnout in rural parts of the state as well. I think one difference is maybe, the undecideds. There's not very many this time around. We had found in 2016 that a lot of the undecided voters toward the end broke for Trump. So is that something that could happen this time, or are all those people, already behind the president? Not really sure. The president's campaign, though, has been on the ground organizing like crazy throughout this entire thing. And, they had been out canvassing and knocking on doors and doing that kind of in-person activity that the Biden campaign wasn't really comfortable with doing up until I think it was probably the end of September, early October, because of the virus. And they have, the Republicans open more offices. They have, they increased the number of staff here 5-fold. They had contacted, I think, 7 million voters as of last week. So they've done a lot of work to connect with people that, are maybe not, the loudest supporters, or maybe first-time voters, not super engaged in politics, and they're banking that bringing out these people is going to help them win the state, and that very well could be true. We have a lot of voter participation in the United States is a lot lower than I think a lot of people would like, and if you get more of those people engaged, and if you get them on your side, if you can win that argument. And, Trump thinks he has a winning argument in the accomplishments he's been able to get done in his first term. That could very well could be true, but it's hard, gauging enthusiasm. It's really difficult, especially in this time where, the virus has kind of changed people's perceptions of like getting out and making that decision. So going to political events and talking to people has been a little bit more challenging this time around. So I don't know. We'll see. He's got a lot of support, though. I mean, like I said, these rallies have been packed, and there was a line of cars in Grand Rapids last night that stretched a couple miles down the road. People had abandoned their cars to walk in the last bit.
Oh my gosh.
there were a lot of people there, and it was cold too. It was 40 degrees. People came at night.
Right.
The sun was down before they were even let in. He had rallies in Macomb County that were like 30 degrees, and those people are really dedicated.
And it's funny because that right election eve rally for Trump in 2016, I mean, I really do think that pulled off a little bit of magic, right? He had that sort of, there was that surge last minute. If you look at the ways the polls were trending, Hillary Clinton had a larger lead earlier in the several weeks before the election, and then it sort of narrowed, and there was just a little bit of I guess a phenomenon that went on, and I see everything from his frequent focus on Michigan to that kind of that rally echoing the one in 16. I see him trying to recreate that magic, and I do think that that's possible in Michigan.
It was very intentional that they came back to Michigan, and the circumstances were eerily similar. I mean, the vice president was on stage a couple hours before Trump arrived, and he was talking about how 2016 the president landed after midnight. He spoke until about 1:30. There was this massive crowd, and after the rally, he turned to me and said, that crowd doesn't look like the crowd of someone who comes in second place. And this time around, the president got on stage at like 12:02. He spoke until around 1:30. There was a massive crowd there. So the kind of parallels between this last minute blitz that the Trump campaign has made in Michigan, they're hoping that it pays off like it did last time around. But it's not a direct comparison. I think Biden has been here more than Hillary Clinton. I think Democrats have kept their foot on the gas in a way that they didn't last time around. They've been talking a lot about, don't get complacent. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, obviously.
Well, one thing I love, and obviously you and I would be talking about Michigan no matter what, because that's our expertise, but nationally, Michigan is a huge part of the picture and a huge part of the electoral map this year in a way that really has never been acknowledged, at least in my time as a political reporter. Even in 2016, you saw Michigan get I guess, sort of snubbed a little bit by the Hillary Clinton campaign. Trump was putting this huge emphasis here. And it seemed like, nationally people were sort of like, well, why is he putting this huge emphasis here to some extent? So I am thrilled that we're going to be part of the national conversation tonight. And I am excited to be back here because Malachi and I are going to jump back on right when polls close and do some updates. One thing we're going to talk about is sort of what to expect in terms of the patterns of results coming in, potential delays, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, hopefully you guys will join us and drop some questions in, and I hope you guys found this useful. It's going to be an interesting night, and I'm really excited to see what happens here. As Emily noted, I mean, Michigan has not really been at the center of the political universe like it is this time around, so it's been really cool to see people come in and try to earn your votes, and hopefully you guys do go out and vote if you haven't already.
And if you do have questions that you want us to answer at 8, feel free to drop them in this thread, and we'll look here as well as checking our new live at 8. So we look forward to that, and we'll see you then.